We're at my dream school, Harvard. This is the head of recruiting, the associate head coach, Nate Cole.
When they sign up to be a Division I baseball player at Harvard, they're signing up to be as well-rounded a human being as possible.
Welcome back to another episode of On the Subject. I'm your host, Michael Vilardo, co-founder and CEO of Subject, subject.com, subject.ai. You know where to find us. And today we have an incredibly special guest. We're at my dream school, Harvard. This is the head of recruiting, the associate head coach, Nate Cole. We're so excited to have him share all the secrets of how we can be able to develop an incredible Division I baseball career, go to the best school in the world, and be able to have a great chance to compete for Ivy League title. Welcome to the show today.
Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And so we always like to really be able to start by setting the scene. You know, we're at Harvard. It's a rainy day, so we're in the hitting facility. You know, what sets Harvard apart from other Division I baseball programs?
Well, certainly I think you got to start with the academics, right?
Choose the degree always.
It's arguably the best degree in the world, and we certainly think so. And so from that standpoint, it certainly sets it apart from other Division I schools. And certainly there's a number of great academic schools out there for sure, but Harvard is we feel at the top of the list.
Well, I talk about this a lot, and I believe with strong certainty that, hey, there's so many great schools out there. We talk a lot about go to a top 100 U.S. News school, but every tier is very different. And when you talk about those top 5 schools, I think 100% out of 100 people would say Harvard's in the top 5 schools in the country. I say it's number 1 school in the world. That really is a special opportunity. And so when you have a player commit to Harvard, what are they signing up for beyond the baseball field?
Well, I think in recruiting, what's certainly important to us is the total package, right? So, we just talked about the prestige of the degree from Harvard, but certainly when they sign up to be a Division I baseball player at Harvard, they're signing up to be as well-rounded a human being as possible, right? So from an academic standpoint, from their ability on the baseball field, from what they're doing in the classroom, from what they're doing in their social life, in some of their extracurriculars outside of just baseball, they're signing up to be as well-rounded a student athlete as there is.
No, it really is the truth. And so why, as a student athlete, I know why I would, but why as a student athlete should you choose Harvard over LSU or Harvard over, let's call it University of Oklahoma? Why do I commit to Harvard over a traditional powerhouse?
Well, this degree sets you up for life. That's the simple answer. I think the people that you surround yourself with here and the people here at Harvard are extraordinary.
Yes.
And those who you surround yourself with are oftentimes those who are employing you, who will become your best friends and share ideas and things like that. So we're a big believer in the students here are certainly extraordinary, as I mentioned. The teammates and friends that you're making for life here within the baseball team are extraordinary. And I think this, right? There's more CEOs that come from Harvard than any other
Number one
university in the world, and essentially that's what they're signing up to hopefully accomplish in whatever field they may want to do.
Yeah, and life isn't all about money, to be clear when I say this, but a lot of people don't realize that the top 1% of Harvard grads or the top 1% of doctors, lawyers, CEOs, they all make a lot more than players in MLB. Shockingly to hear, I know, but it is actually the truth. You just don't see it on TV as much. And, when you dream your whole life to play pro baseball, this is my dream. It's so understandable that's where you want to go. But to have that degree to be able to fall back on, it's very, very special. And so, when we talk about Harvard, it's not just about the wins. It's about developing young men. And you do a great job of developing young men, student athletes, and we're so indebted to what you do. What does excellence mean in the Harvard baseball program?
It's everything from what they're accomplishing in the classroom, from the type of human being they are. I think that's something that Coach Decker, our head coach, does an amazing job at. He's a developer of young men and making sure that we're creating husbands and fathers and brothers and obviously future employees. He does an amazing job at that. And so when we talk about excellence at Harvard, it's all of that. It's not just, obviously we want them to hit 350 at shortstop and
Yes.
and have a 1 ERA and hopefully, go on to play in the major leagues and hear their name called as a draft pick. That's excellence, but it's also what they're doing in the classroom and the type of human being they are. And we certainly hope that, our guys are exemplary in all those areas.
What kind of student athletes, really succeeds here in the Harvard baseball program? Like, the last, 5 years that you've been here, what have you seen from the best players? What do they do differently?
Yeah, I think what's important in the recruiting process here is, we want guys that love baseball. And what's important to us is also guys that want to have a future in baseball. They want to be professional players. That's really, really important to us because at the end of the day, those are the guys that work the hardest, right? They're gonna chase their dream day in and day out. So that is really, really important to us. Obviously, the beauty of Harvard is should that not work out, they have the best degree in the world and they're still set up for life. But to be an all-conference player, to hear their name drafted, their name picked in the major league draft, which we've had a lot of success with.
Yeah, how many kids in the last few years? It's really impressive how many, and that's why I always talk about, you can get drafted from Harvard, you can go to the show from Harvard.
Yeah, we've had the last 4 years, we've had 2 pitchers each year.
Let's go, that's awesome.
And a couple years ago, we had 2 top 10 rounders.
That's huge.
So, yeah, we've had a lot of success, certainly in, we feel more than any other Ivy League team, in terms of developing major league talent. We have 6 guys right now, in the minors knocking on the doorsteps. We've had major league guys pitch.
Tanner Anderson. He was there when I was playing. He played in the big leagues, yeah.
Yep. So, it's a place where you can do both, right? And that's why we're looking for the best of the best, and they just happen to be really, really good students as well.
So you talk about wanting to go pro. How do you know when a high school student has that burning desire that they want to play at the highest level? What do you look for, and how do you, gauge that?
I think that's just doing research, right? We, from developing relationships with the student athletes, talking to their coaches, trying to get as much as we can from a visibility standpoint, watching them play, watching how they go about their work. So it's a all-inclusive process for sure. And we do not take or make decisions rashly. There's a process here, from developing the relationships to having them on campus, to spending some time with them, to spending time with their families. That's really important to us. Obviously getting communication with their high school coaches. Sometimes it's getting communication with their guidance counselor.
Wow,
or their
exceptional. You do a lot of homework here.
Yeah, we try to, because at the end of the day, we have to get it right.
Yeah.
And we're not going to ask someone to leave this university or this baseball team, that just because they hit 150, we're not going to ask them to.
And that's rare, to be clear. We want to make that really clear. A lot of these schools, especially the larger Division I programs, you are a number, and as soon as you're not performing, your scholarship's cut, you're out of here. It sounds like you have a long 4-year vision for every student athlete who walks in the door at Harvard.
Yeah, player development's important, right? We're not going to give up on guys. We're going to continue to push them to be their very best each and every day. And so that's why it's important we get it right, and when you have fewer opportunities, than probably your normal Division I to get it right, because of the admission spots, we have to make sure that there's a process involved. And
yeah, let's talk about that. So when you're talking about a student athlete coming to Harvard, what's the most critical for the admissions? Is it the test scores, the GPA, the letter of recommendation? What goes into the factor? Because I'm sure you have a tight relationship with admissions to really know what you can and cannot recruit.
Yeah. Well, I think the beauty of this place is it's all included, right? It's the whole package. Obviously one of the best schools in the world is right down the road in Cambridge as well. And
MIT.
But that may be more about your math score and your GPA. Everything matters here, so that could be one thing that's really, really important to the process is making sure that guys are taking the strongest academic schedule possible.
So you want a lot of APs, ideally, or honors.
The more APs, the better. That's really, really important in the process. Obviously, they need to have the strongest GPA possible, and certainly from a test score standpoint, they have to succeed there. But also their extracurriculars. What are they doing outside of the classroom is really important. What kind of what kind of person are they? How will they do in an interview? When they interview, we have
Do all your players have an alumni interview?
They do. Yeah.
Is that pretty constant throughout the whole student body?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. And so, like, let's say a kid commits to Harvard. How quickly do you find out if they're going to get in or not?
There's a process. I think all our guys are going early decision, early action in the fall.
So then they'll find out probably around the holidays?
Correct. Yep. Yeah, sometime usually by the end of October, early November.
Oh, that's great.
They're getting what they call a likely letter. Yeah. It is not official. It is just a likely decision. But as long as they continue down the correct path and doing what they're supposed to do in the classroom, then they should be fine.
That's fantastic, and you don't have to go into the full details. You'll share what you're comfortable with, but when I was at Penn, it seemed like there was a sliding scale of like, hey, this is the average SAT that your team can have. You need to hit that, and so there's a few players that might be below that, but then you have the higher performers that carry that. Is that something consistent throughout the Ivy League?
Yeah. Every Ivy League program has an academic index that they have to reach. Every Ivy League program academic index number may be a little bit different. I can't speak for the other Ivies. Obviously, ours is pretty strong.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been.
So at the end of the day, our group of student athletes that we bring in the process of the class have to reach a certain number, and that's a sliding scale, as you mentioned. So their GPA, their SATs, their APs all factor into that number.
Fantastic, because it is like a partial inside joke, but we talked about like if you weren't playing all the time, you better be a really great student, so that way that you're continuing. And it's just like business, like anything, you have to add value no matter what role you are on the team. And maybe for the bullpen catcher, and you have incredible test scores, you're super valuable to the team to be able to recruit some more flexible academic situations.
Yeah, it's certainly, getting into Harvard, we all know the numbers, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of perfect SAT scores denied here.
Yeah, so getting into Harvard on your own is certainly a challenge, right? So, that's the beauty of baseball, right? It can provide a vehicle for you to get into the best university in the world.
And then use baseball as a tool.
Right, exactly.
I love that. So, when you talk about Harvard baseball, if you had to describe it in 3 words, what would it be?
I'd say success. I'd say hardworking. And, I think what we try to be honest, is we try to be as blue collar as possible. We can
talk more about that. That's cool.
Just in terms of how we go about our business, right? Like, again, we talked earlier about trying to be successful at everything we do. And I think in order to do that here, it takes a level of work ethic that certainly extends well beyond your normal student athlete, right? If we want them to hit 330 and win 10 games on the mound, that takes a lot of work. They also have to crush it in the classroom. If they're going to set themselves up for life after baseball, that takes a lot of work. And on top of that, they're playing a Division I schedule. There's a day in and day out work that needs to happen. That again, when you become a student athlete here, you're signing up for, you better be ready for that. You better be ready for that, because it's not easy. It is not easy, and we're certainly cognizant of that. But how we go about our business, we try to make it as blue collar and in a good way. We try to grind as much as possible.
No, you got to grind. That makes exceptionalism happen. So what's a normal? Like today we had a rain out, so not a normal day. What's a normal day look like? Normal non-game day for a Harvard baseball player?
Sure. Well, I would say a lot of the mornings, certainly in the fall, for example, I'll give you a typical morning, typical day in the fall. They're lifting, 3-4 days a week in the morning at 7:30. Okay. So they're getting up, they're coming across the river. I say across the river, our athletic and academic portions of campus are separated by the Charles River. So
this is technically Boston, and the school is Cambridge, correct? Okay, we're learning.
So they're coming across the river, getting ready to lift at 7:30.
How are they coming across the river?
Some are walking. A lot of our guys have electric scooters.
I love
So yeah, that's
But
pretty.
nobody's typically driving, not a lot of cars.
No, none of our guys have
Cool.
cars.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're coming over. They're getting ready for lift, and then they're lifting for an hour and 15 minutes or so, and then they're heading over to class. Usually a lot of their classes in the fall and spring start around 9 a.m. And then they're in class till probably 2 p.m. Obviously, with some breaks in between, but it is a pretty full schedule. At 2 o'clock, they're coming over back across the river, getting ready, any treatment that they may have, getting their bodies ready to go for practice. We'll usually practice around 3 o'clock, 3:30. Practice is we try to be as fast as efficient as possible, knowing that, these guys have a lot on their plate. But we're talking about a 2 hour and 15-minute practice. They're getting something in their bodies to refuel, and then a lot of times they're heading home to study for a good portion of the evening. So, and then it's doing that, and it's doing that, and it's doing that
Every day.
over and over again.
Yeah.
And then in the spring, obviously it can vary based off the game schedule, but you add travel on top of that. For example, we got back from, we had to stay an extra day due to weather. So we played a doubleheader on Sunday in Ithaca, New York at Cornell. We stayed an extra day Monday. We got back last night at 10 a.m. Those guys got to be right back in class at 9 a.m., ready to go.
It's a tough turnaround.
Yeah.
What do they do about class? They just missed class yesterday.
They did. It's a lot of communication with the professors here, which the professors are outstanding.
Really it's best in class.
I think the unique part about Harvard and this university too is that everyone here has some passion outside of what they do in the classroom that helped them get into this university. So our guys, it just happens to be baseball, right? But, some, they could be writing music. They could be, some science program, and whatever the case may be. Each individual has a passion that takes up a good portion of their time outside of their classwork.
Oh, that's exceptional, and really great to be able to walk through it. And so we want to go through some recruiting deep dives now. What are you looking for in these student athletes? How can they get a better chance of being recruited by you and getting to play at this, one-of-a-kind university? And so what's the primary way Harvard recruits players? Is it showcases, travel ball, high school, camps, referrals? How do you go about your business there?
Yeah, I don't know if there's one primary way. It's everything. It is everything. For sure, our camps are massive. Right.
How many camps a year do we have here?
We'll do a couple in the wintertime, 2 or 3 in the summertime. So, anywhere on a calendar year, anywhere from like 5 to 7 camps. But those are huge just in terms of, the opportunity, obviously, for them to see campus.
Yep.
The opportunity for the coaching staff to interact with them, to spend time with them. That's as important as anything, right? And then obviously, the opportunity to see their skill set, right in front of the whole staff. That's huge. I'm a big believer in watching guys play in games. Showcases are great. They're important. Don't get me wrong. They give us an opportunity to see an initial skill set. But at the end of the day, I want to see guys compete in games. I want to see, pitchers succeed. I want to see them fail. I want to see hitters fail. We try to see as many at bats, as possible. When we talk about, needing to get the decision right, a lot of times that takes a number of at bats. It takes a number of innings. And in some cases, it takes, over the course of a couple calendar years. So, we'll start tracking guys that are, freshman, sophomore years.
How do you start tracking them? How do you become aware of this freshman or sophomore?
It could be word of mouth. It could be from high school games, our staff getting out to see, high school games. It could be from showcases and continue it to track their progress, whether it's their metrics or conversations with their travel coaches, their high school coaches.
When are you on the road the most recruiting? I'd imagine summer?
Yeah. As soon as our season concludes, beginning of June till honestly the middle of August, we're on the road.
And what are the biggest events you go to in the summer?
Well, certainly Harvard being what it is, we recruit nationally. So
I bet you have a lot of California kids on the road.
Yeah, from California to obviously within our own backyard here. So we spend a lot of time in Georgia at PBR and in the perfect game tournaments.
Yep.
So we're there for the WWBAs and the PG elites in Alabama. The PBR tournaments, the futures. We spend a lot of time in Georgia.
Yeah, that's where the best. I mean, that's the same when I was playing, which was a while ago now, but trying to get to go to East Cobb and Marietta and all these great tournaments, that's like the dream.
Yeah. And then, again, we'll spend some time in Texas and California and then obviously we try to do as best we can in terms of our own backyard and getting kids that, from New England. We've had a lot of success in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's a great state. There's pretty great people there.
Yeah. So it's all inclusive. It spans the country. And then, again, so from showcases to games to high school games to travel ball games to our camps.
So once it hits fall ball, you're pretty busy on campus again.
Yeah, there's a couple events in the fall.
Jupiter.
We'll go to Fort Myers and Jupiter.
Yeah, those are great.
And
those are awesome.
outside of that, we'll go to Arizona. Has some events in the fall as well that are important to us, and certainly get a chance to see those West Coast kids.
Yeah, I love what you said about the game. So you really like evaluating game talent. I completely agree with you, by the way, because baseball especially, it's such a sport where you can look amazing. You can be a 5 o'clock hitter. You can hit great on the field and batting practice, but in the game it's very different. How do you recognize failure? You talked about you want to see a kid fail. How many times you give them a chance to be able to be evaluated, so that way you make sure that you didn't catch them on a bad day.
Yeah, and that's ultimately why we try to see guys as much as we can, right? Now obviously if there's failure multiple times in a row, we're probably going to look in another direction.
It's totally fair.
But I guess going off what you mentioned, we may see a pitcher fail. Every pitcher has a bad outing. They don't show up with their best stuff on certain days. Sometimes it's how do they go through that, or seeing their next outing and then they show up and they bounce back, or they make adjustments. Or hey, we're watching an individual his sophomore year, and then maybe by junior year we're seeing a lot further progress and development, and that's important too. We know that that individual hasn't reached their ceiling. They're going to continue to work to get better. We talked about what kind of work ethic we're looking for, right? Like that shows that right there. So, failure is important within reason. We don't, we're looking for the best of the best. So, we want guys to certainly have a level of success, especially from the offensive side, that they show that they can swing the bat.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to hit. They find a place for you. So how about outreach from a player standpoint? If I'm trying to get a hold of you, is the best way to email you? Is it to DM you? Like, what do I do to try to get on your radar as a player? What do you suggest?
Yeah, that's always a tricky question, right? We get a lot of emails.
I bet, yeah. How many a day do you think you get? Like over 100 or over 50?
Yeah, it's probably between, anywhere on a given day between 25 and 100.
That's a lot. That's a lot, yeah. So do you read any of them?
I read most of them. Our staff will always, at some point in time, read all of them.
Oh, fantastic. So, how do I stand out in that pile?
Simplicity.
Yeah, shorter is better, everyone. Concise.
Yeah, simplicity. To be honest with you, a lot of times, if they include a video, I go right to the video.
Yep.
Or I go right to the Twitter handle.
Why is Twitter such a big deal for recruiting in baseball? We're hearing that a lot lately.
I think it's your own profile. It's your own resume, if you will, and you get a chance to see videos. And again, we talked about progress from one year to the other. I can go back and watch from their videos from their freshman year, their sophomore year, their junior year, see the development, the strength. And it's, again, I think it's a resume. It's a free resume, which is great. So,
what do you like in a video? What do you like? What should I videotape of myself to show off my skills? Is it just showing hand speed, hitting the ball, and infield or catching actions, or is it live game tape? Like, what's best for you?
Yeah, ideally the live game tape is the best. Again, we're not looking for 10-minute videos by any stretch, right? We want to see simplicity. We want it to be concise. So, doing this for a long time, right? I have a good idea of what I'm looking for in a video at this point, right? I can, okay, how's their arm work on the mound? How athletically are they moving, down the mound? everyone's going to send their best clips, right? So at the end of the day,
everyone cherry picks. Yeah.
yeah. So, at the end of the day, we're kind of just getting a chance to pique our interest in terms of going to see that individual in person, right? So,
would it be better to Twitter DM you or email you?
Yeah, I've gotten this question before, and I'll be honest with you, the Twitter DM sometimes is better.
Cool. That's great.
Those I get less of,
Yeah.
and I'm going to pay attention to
And it's
them.
easier, it's less friction. I right away have your Twitter handle, I click right on your profile.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about if I got 100 emails on a day, we just don't have the time to respond to all 100 emails. Our staff does an awesome job, in terms of getting back to as many as we can. But at the end of the day, we're not getting back to everyone. I'm reading everyone. I'm watching almost all the videos, but in terms of responses, it can be challenging. And the Twitter DMs are great because I get less of them. Be honest, it stands out a little bit more.
It does. I like that. And when's the ideal time you think to really, especially getting recruited to Ivy League, it might be different than other schools in sports, to get recruited? Is it still that, junior year summer, or, is it swaying earlier nowadays? Like, what's the peak commit window right now?
Yeah, I think, honestly, it's certainly a lot of times their junior summer, their junior year. We're not paying attention to too many freshmen at this point, especially since the rule changed.
So what's the rule change for all of us out here?
We cannot communicate with individuals until August 1st going into their junior year.
Okay.
And then they are not allowed to be on campus until September 1st of their junior year.
Well, on August 1st, you can now outbound them. You could call them August 1st?
Yes.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. And then September 1st, they could come to, is it an official visit? Or unofficial? Or?
Both.
Both? Awesome.
Yeah, they're not allowed to be on campus, or at least have conversations with the coaching staff until September 1st of their junior year. So, a lot of the pre-work may be done around their, the sophomore, the end of the summer of their sophomore year. And then a lot of the communication is obviously happening during their junior year.
And so I'm a kid. I just commit to Harvard baseball. I'm so excited. I'm getting on campus. What's the biggest adjustment you have for your freshmen right now?
I think it's a big adjustment no matter where you are.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been at a few different spots, and it's the same. It doesn't matter what school, really. It's okay. The level of play is peaked up when you start adding strength and conditioning into your daily existence, along with practice. And the academic rigors. It is an adjustment for sure, and I see it every single time with every single freshman. It takes an adjustment. You learn time management, you better learn it pretty quick. And some will fail with that, and that's okay too, right? It's just about adjusting. But yeah, I think that all that included, the level of work that it takes on a daily basis when you add in the academics, that makes it a challenge.
So how does the Ivy League schedule impact development compared to other conferences?
Yeah, we do not have as much time with our student athletes as your typical Division I. We have less hours in the fall, for example. And again, we talked about trying to be as from a practice setting as fast and efficient as possible. We have lesser time in the fall in both our non-championship segment and when we're, let's say, in our individual works. Along with the weight room. And then in the season, we're in the same 20 hours as everyone else. So our championship segment, when the guys come back after Christmas break and we're getting ready to roll the season here, they're in the normal 20 hours as every other student athlete. So
fantastic. And now the Ivy League is doing a 3-game set every weekend instead of when I was playing, it was a doubleheader every week. How is the program adjusted to these changes in the rules?
I think it's like every other rule change. You find ways to make it applicable. It's been like that for quite some time now. What we're hoping to adjust, we are now the only conference that plays a doubleheader on Saturday and a single on Sunday. And obviously the point behind that is to try to reduce missed class time.
Yeah.
We're hoping to become a Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
I think it's way better. I'm rooting for it. Ivy League, if you watch the content. I will say the 3-game set I think is probably way better than the 4-game set. doing a doubleheader Saturday, Sunday was absolutely so brutal because especially when you're at a Harvard or I was lucky enough to go to Penn, you're competing with kids who are in the library the whole day, Saturday, Sunday.
Yep.
And so playing one game in a day is just much more time efficient. And that's also Friday. What are you doing Friday anyways? To your point, if you have to travel, you might miss class. But a lot of kids don't even have class on Friday.
Yeah, each school's a little bit different. Certainly our guys, they do have class on Friday. It is less
really?
than
Okay.
that's other days for sure. But yeah, it's it's a doubleheader day. There's a lot that goes into it.
Doubleheader day, you're at the field 8 to 8 typically. Like or at least when you get in the locker room at 8. The game starts at 11. By the time the second game wrapped up at 6:30, you shower, you got to walk back to your house. It's typically you leave. I remember counting like the door-to-door time. I always counted. It was around 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. leaving the apartment we lived in to getting back. So definitely fascinating. I'd love to hear the rule changes. And so we're going to do a recruiting this or that rapid fire segment. You just have to say one or the other. You can give context if you want. This is all your ballpark. We're coming into your wheelhouse here. So let's see what happens. So first, baseball metrics. Batting average or exit velocity?
Batting average.
Batting average. ERA or throwing velocity?
ERA.
Stolen bases or 60-yard dash?
Stolen bases.
Slugging percentage or home runs?
Slugging percentage.
Okay, now we're going to recruiting or academics. SAT, ACT, or GPA?
GPA.
Showcases or tournaments?
Tournaments.
Emails or DMs?
DMs.
AP classes or multi-sport athlete?
Can I say both?
Yeah. He's cheating on one. We'll give you that. We'll give you that. Okay. So here's some insight questions. We want you to just go, first thing that comes to your mind, you just let it rip. One mistake most families make.
Again, I think certainly with the world that I'm dealing with, it's, making sure that they're making a 40-year decision and not a decision for the next 4 months, right? This place sets you up for the rest of your life. And I think it's easy to get caught up in the moment, in the recruiting process. It's an enjoyable time and we want guys to enjoy that. But, at the end of the day, baseball ends for everyone at some point.
Yeah, what I say is prioritize happiness 25 to 75, not 18 to 22. And I think it hits. Okay, one thing athletes should start earlier.
Without question, the weight room. Your body's your billboard. And
I like that.
Again, when I'm out recruiting, a lot of times your body's your billboard. They're showcasing to me what kind of work ethic they have within just their physical frame. So it doesn't apply to everyone, but for me, getting in the weight room, as early as possible. And I also think it allows, you to learn about how your body works, right? Like what adjustments you need to make. The same lifts do not apply to all my pitchers, right? Like everyone's a little bit different. Some work better for others and certainly in how we're trying to get them to move and what we're trying to accomplish. So without question, the weight room.
Love that. One thing parents should stop doing.
I think communication is important, in the recruiting process with parents. I am happy to get on the phone with parents, but we do not want them being the driving force, right? I want the student athlete to be the driving force in their recruitment process. The parents are important, when they're on the visit, we spend a lot of time with them and try to get to know them, and that's important. But we do not want them driving the process, for sure.
Yeah, you got to win the parents, but they shouldn't be driving it. One coaching lesson you learned the hard way.
Well, I know this. Baseball is a game that will humble you.
Yes, it
when
will.
you think you have some things figured out, the game will quickly teach you do not. So, I think I've always just tried to continue to learn and develop and grow as a coach. And certainly I do not have all the answers, and I continue to try to search to find those answers. But this game will humble you for sure.
100% it will. And okay, let's come back to that last one. One recruiting myth that needs to die.
We encourage multi-sport athletes. We do not encourage specialization. So, I think there's a myth out there that, in order to keep up with the Joneses, you have to specialize in whatever sport. And that's not the case. We love multi-sport athletes. Our head coach, Coach Decker, was a multi-sport athlete himself. We love multi-sport athletes. So I'm a big believer that, the work that they're doing on the hockey program, in the wintertime with their high school team or their basketball team, that continues to encourage development, competitiveness, work ethic, being a great teammate. Those are all, and some of the movement patterns are all important for baseball. We're all for multi-sport guys.
Multi-sport, you heard it here. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how, you really measure what matters. What are the non-measurable traits that matter the most to you about your players that you recruit?
Well, it's certainly difficult to measure their heart, right? And that's the part that, every college coach chases after, is to learn what's inside each individual. So that's not something that we can measure, but, we're trying to find that answer each and every day in the recruiting process, and then continuing to encourage it when they're here on campus, for sure.
Yeah, and so what measures a good player from a Harvard level player?
Someone that, again, has the ability to manage everything, Again, our guys are in an off day right now, and there's probably some work that they need to do on their own from a baseball standpoint today. They also have to they missed, a day of class yesterday, so they have a lot of classwork they need to catch up on. We're getting close to midterms. Some of our guys are involved in that right now, so they're studying for midterms. There's a lot going on. They need to compartmentalize and continue to get after it in all areas. So in my viewpoint, what separates us or what makes us a little bit different is that just, they're working each day to be great at everything.
And so when we talk about, I know we talked about how we want to prefer the ERA and batting average, but what would you advise to someone around velo? What velo do you look for Harvard?
Yeah, that it continues to go up a little bit each and every year for sure.
Yeah, because they're throwing harder these days.
Yeah. I'm always careful in how I answer that question because at the end of the day, we want outs. Yeah. As the pitching coach here, I want guys that can get outs. And that's an obvious statement, but that can come in different forms or fashions. We have the ability to recruit some of the best arms in the country here. Hence we've gotten a number of guys drafted. I think the easy answer would be upper 80s, low 90s, when they're involved in the recruiting process. But again, we're going to look for some outlier traits as well. Are they left-handed, right-handed? What's their release point? How does the ball react, in the air? So at the end of the day, we're looking for outs, and it's not about velo, but I'd also be lying if I didn't say it didn't matter.
So upper 80s plus, what about 60-yard dash time?
Yeah, it's somewhere below the 6-8 range, depending on the position. We have some guys that are slower than that, certainly. But we're always going to continue to look to try to recruit some athleticism in this program.
Awesome. So let's talk about a little bit more of the pitch around why should I come to Harvard as a student athlete. When we talk about development beyond baseball, what do you do to help prepare the student athletes for life after baseball?
Well, I think one cool thing here is, Morgan Brown is a former shortstop here and a tremendous player in his own right, and someone that is one of the best human beings I've ever come across. He is listed as our director of baseball operations, but in turn, he is a big part of our alumni development and will help our guys set up some engagement with alumni in the area or field in which they want to partake in. So, just in terms of developing those connections, those relationships, and it's what this place does better than any place, right? We talked about the CEOs.
It does. The network here is insane.
Yeah, so the networking that Morgan provides for our guys is next level. And we try to, Coach Decker does a great job. He brings a lot of our alumni back on campus every now and then, to get a chance to interact with the guys, to tell about their story, how they went about their business, in whatever field that may be. So, again, this place, the connections and the networking is outrageous.
It's the best of the best. It's we have a lot of Harvard people involved with subject, and we're really lucky to have them. How do you navigate internships, especially with a lot of summer ball commitments? How do you help students get internships?
Yeah, well, again, going back to some of the connections that our guys are able to make in certain areas, those connections allow you to skip some of those steps in terms of the internships, which is tremendous, right? If a former baseball player is a CEO of a company, he understands what our shortstop goes through on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Right? He understands it. He knows the level of work that it takes. So that part allows us to skip some steps. We certainly have some guys that do internships. Playing baseball is important to us, and playing baseball in the summer is important to us. We want guys to continue their development. There's certainly some situations where a guy may be injured for a summer, or we have a particular player development goal that may not require playing, and they'll try to take advantage of some internships. Our guys do internships.
Where do you want them playing in the summer?
We try to put them in the most competitive league across the country. We've had guys in the Cape Cod League. We've had guys in the NECBL. We have guys playing in the California Collegiate League. It doesn't matter. We're just going to try to put them in the best situation for them as an individual in that summer in terms of their player development. Some guys need at-bats. Some guys need innings. Some guys need lesser innings and further competition. It all varies based off the individual. But, a lot of times we tell our guys too, there's only so many opportunities that you get to play summer baseball and experience different parts of the country, experience different teammates, different cultures. That part's really cool. So they're all over the place.
That's cool. And we actually glossed over, so I want to bring it back, is talk about the evolving landscape of NIL and transfer portal. Does Harvard, do you currently have any transfers on your roster?
We do not have
Zero.
any transfers. The Harvard in general has 10 transfers or around 10 transfers per year.
Athletics or the general?
The whole school.
Wow. At least 10.
Yeah. So a lot of times those are not student athletes.
Yeah.
We do not deal in the transfer portal.
So you don't spend any time in the transfer portal?
We do not spend any time in the transfer portal. That is just not something that's feasible here.
Okay. And then what about NIL? How does Harvard partake or not partake in NIL?
Yeah, our guys, may get involved in certain small NIL deals. And again, we do not participate in a collective, right? We are not in the rev share agreement for sure. But again, we're a big believer that the money that they're going to make after they leave this place is going to certainly
I completely agree.
The NIL or some of the other programs.
I mean, we need to get that out there more, is that so many of these student athletes, and I was one of them, who falls for the scholarship track, where you think because you got a big scholarship from a lesser known university that you're getting the deal of a lifetime. And I always say now, because it's public, is the Rick Singer admission scandal. I don't know the guy at all. Wish him the best. Obviously, what happened was not very good, and we don't ever advise that. But if these wealthy people are paying this guy millions of dollars to get their kids into Ivy League schools, USC, UCLA, maybe that's worth a little bit more than a small scholarship NIL. I don't know. We'll see. But those people, rich and powerful people, do know a lot. So it's definitely interesting there. So give me, as we're getting closer to the wrap up, give me the pitch. Why do I got to go to Harvard? Why do I got to come play for you?
Well, one thing I tell recruits a lot too is especially in today's landscape, the college baseball game is becoming older and older and older.
What's the average age right now?
I don't know if it's certainly
22?
with the advent of the transfer portal, right? A lot of teams are trying to become as old as possible and as experienced as possible, and I understand it. That is not something that happens here, right? Again, we talked about we don't involve in the transfer portal. So when our guys come, they're going to play. Yeah. Now, how much they play, that's up to them. But, we hear recruits every single day say, I want to play, my freshman year. I want to pitch my freshman year. And that opportunity to do so is here, right? So, and I am a big believer, if you want to develop, the best way to do that is to play, right? You're going to learn through failure. You're going to learn through success. You're going to learn through at-bats. You're going to learn through innings on the bump. So that opportunity to come here and compete right away in an outstanding league, and, it's the best degree in the world, and you're setting yourself up for, for life after baseball. It's the total package. And again, we have some amazing student athletes here, and to be surrounded by them each and every day is something special, and certainly in my mind, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I wish I could go back to school. What player should not choose Harvard?
Again, I think that's one they just care about baseball and not academics, or they just care about academics and not baseball.
No, I love how much you have a passion for baseball here. Like, I know when I was playing, all I wanted to do was play pro baseball. I think that you're attracting a kid who really is the most ambitious kid possible on and off the field, and it's really beautiful. And so, when you talk about the vision for Harvard, what's your goal over the next 3 to 5 years for the program?
Well, the easier answer is championships, right? We're chasing championships every day. It's a team goal. It's a collective goal. It's the staff's goal. We're going to chase championships day in and day out. We're looking to develop these guys, in terms of trying to create Major League Baseball players and get their name called in the draft. So I think those two things are certainly important. And then, as I said, what Coach Deck does better than anyone is just continue to develop them as young men. So developing the whole package, but for sure, we want to be a team that, is winning Ivy League titles and again, getting to regionals and making some noise in regionals, for sure.
And so what would you, as the last closing question, again, thank you so much for your time. It's so inspiring. Again, go to Harvard. I always tell everyone, you cannot replace a degree. What would you like Harvard's baseball legacy to be?
I think the answer to that would just be, again, ultimately the type of men that have came through this program, that ultimately became successful in their careers, that became successful, husbands and fathers. I think that's ultimately what's most important. And then obviously, we want to be a program that, has a chance to continue to make some noise on a national stage. We believe we're capable of that. There's some challenges within that, and there's some challenges at this place within that, for sure. But as is the case at every university, so yeah, I think just trying to be as well-rounded as possible.
Amazing. Well, we really appreciate your time, and we're rooting for all the great work you do for your student athletes. And thank you again for giving us a chance to share your story and the program story. And remember to follow, click like, subscribe. We're really trying to get our followers up. Spotify, YouTube, you know where to find us. Thank you so much, and continue to be able to engage with us, being able to do tours across the country at some incredible baseball programs where you can get a great degree, a great athletic experience, and better your life forever. Thank you so much, everybody.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you, Mike.